Mom has been deceased for over 8 years now. The things I appreciate her now are different than before. I appreciate that she raised me to be a strong, independent woman and taught me everything I know about how to be a mom today.
I appreciate my mom because no matter how many missteps I've taken in my life, how many things I've done that maybe she didn't necessarily agree with, how many times I've maybe gotten it wrong, she's always supported me. She's always treated me with respect, and she's always made it abundantly clear that she has nothing but unconditional love for me. And over the years, she's become one of my best friends and the first person I go to when I don't know where else to turn.
We love our mom for her generosity, her humor.
And for always being on top of things and making sure that we're the best that we can be.
This Mother's Day 2020, I want to celebrate my mom. One of my favorite things about her was her name, Ethel. So fun. I really admired and appreciated how she spent such time, energy, and pride to feed her family and make special events just that much more special. And I'm glad that she and I got to be best friends before God took her to heaven. So happy Mother's Day, Ethel in heaven. You're a girl. Talk to you soon.
I think the thing that I appreciate the most about my mom is her faith in me. Even when I would be at my lowest and not believing in myself, she would always be there with a word of encouragement to get me back up and going and moving along. So I think that's the biggest thing.
I like my mom because she reads to me.
So I really appreciate what you do for me every day, and I love you.
I love her so much. I don't know what I'd do without her.
Well, friends, you're crying. I'm not crying. You're crying. That's great. What a tribute to the mothers here in all of our networks. Good morning, grace and peace to all of you. My name is Jeremy. I'm the worship leader here at our South Lansing campus. I'm thrilled that you're joining us from wherever you're at, likely in your living room, to join us as we're continuing a series called Christianity and World Religions, where we're understanding and loving our neighbors better. It's great. And today we have a fantastic worship service. We have Rabbi Amy here to talk about her faith, Judaism, one of which is close to us Christians' hearts because our Messiah, Jesus, was a Jew. And so we're going to explore similarities between both faiths today. So we're really, really thrilled about today's worship service. I would encourage you not to watch this morning, but somehow worship. Can you do that with us today? So without any further ado, let's sing a song called Love the Lord. It's all about loving God. Let's hear it. Let's do it.
Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. With all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. I will serve you, Lord, with all my heart, with all my soul, with all my mind, with all my strength. I will serve you, Lord, with all my heart, with all my soul, with all my mind, with all my strength. With all my heart, with all my soul, with all my mind, with all my strength. I will love you, Lord, with all my heart, with all my soul, with all my mind, with all my strength. With all my heart, with all my soul, with all my mind, with all my strength, with all my heart, with all my soul, with all my mind, oh, with all my strength, yeah, I love you, Lord, with all my heart, with all my soul, with all my mind, with all my strength. I will love you, Lord, with all my heart, with all my soul, with all my mind, with all my strength. I will love you, Lord, with all my heart, with all my soul, with all my mind, with all my strength.
Woohoo! We knew Jeremy had a twin, but we didn't know that there were 5. Hey, friends, happy Mother's Day. We have some special artists with us today. One of them is David Lalone, and he's got a little poem here for us today about Mother's Day.
We all come from a mother, 9 months in the womb. Fully dependent we grew, we kicked and squirmed, our mother's skin stretched out, bore marks of expansive love, rearranged organs to make room for us. Through labor and pain we were born, and our mothers exclaimed, and so did we. Today we proclaim the praises of our mother who gave us shelter in their bosom, threw us on her hip, carried us over the bridges of life, sacrificed sleep, wiped our ass and made us go to class. She is beautiful, though we have aged her well. She blames us for the gray hair, the wrinkles, and nicknames us the pain in her ass. She drinks her coffee and laughs. We call her mom, and in desperation, mommy, but she is also mother, holy, adored, and also ignored, embraced, and also disgraced. She has raised us, made a home for us with twigs and leaves, and when in time she knew us ready, she prodded us from the nest. To watch us fly, awkwardly at first, but in time we flew gallantly. She never stops loving, she never stops giving, she never stops mothering. Mama, dear mama, we can never repay but to make you a grandmother and always give you praise. Happy Mother's Day.
Woo!
Wow.
Awesome.
Give it up for David in the comments. Thank you, God, for David. Well, peace, friends. My name is Tom. I'm the pastor here at Sycamore Creek, and you have joined us for worship on this quarantined Mother's Day. Today, we've got a special guest. We've got a lot of special guests in worship with us today, but this one is very special and dear to my heart, and she is my mom. And today, my mom is here all the way from Florida to join us in worship for our co-video conversation. All right, friends, give it up for my mom. She's here somewhere. Where is she at? Where is she at? That's not my mom. That's Sarah. There she is. There is my mom.
Hello, everyone.
I think this is kind of one of the miracles of this moment, Mom, is that you are joining us in our worship service. You don't usually get to do that from your bedroom in Florida.
Yes. I have participated by listening, no, before.
Yes. Yeah, but not live. So you're down in the Sunshine State, and just I mean, when we've talked about what our experience has been like up here in Michigan, it snowed this past weekend on Friday, and you've got something different. What's it been like sheltering in place, or I'm not sure what they're calling it down in Florida, but what's it been like for you down there, sheltering in place?
Well, we live on an island in a retirement community. And when we first moved here, which was in January, we had a lot of contacts with people here. There's 2,500 people, and we began making friends and going to activities. And all of a sudden, that all shut down. And so there aren't still any really activities going on around here. What we do is walk and bike and go out in the car and take rides.
You kind of live in like the resort retirement community. I mean, it's sort of like there's this activities everywhere on this place, and that's all been shut down, right? Because this is like a COVID tinderbox there where you live now.
Yes, it's a country club, but it has retirees in it, and you know, it's a very active place usually, so it's been pretty dead.
Yeah. I've been a little bit envious though, because you talk about what you do in quarantine. You go out in your convertible and you drive around.
Yeah. We go get a sandwich at a drive-through.
I think one of the worst parts of it up here in Michigan has just been the bad weather connected with the quarantine, where we are allowed to go outside. I mean, we go to the park or the county park and the trails and so on, but when it's snowing in May, that's pretty depressing.
Yes, that is.
So,
I can remember going back to Indianapolis in May one time because we wanted to vote in the primary. And after we voted, we sat there for a week with the gray weather and said, what are we doing here?
Today is Mother's Day, and as I've talked with many moms, especially young moms, and I have a lot of young moms on my staff and my volunteers here at the church, and they've always got kids crawling all over them while we're having like a Zoom meeting, and I think young moms especially, but moms, any kind of parents with kids in the house right now, or they're having to do schooling, they feel completely stressed and overwhelmed, and they don't know how they're going to get through it. And here you are, you're a grandmother now, and so I guess
love you, Micah. Love you, Sam.
On David's poem, that's the way I've repaid you, is making you a grandma. But tell us, when you think back to being a mom, and I know for many years you were a single mom with 4 of us. And you didn't think you'd get through the day. What got you to the end of the day? I mean, share a little bit of encouragement, wisdom, and experience for the moms who are joining us today.
A lot of times just putting one foot in front of the other and just, taking it one day at a time, because there were a lot of times when I had the 4 of you alone, there was about a 5-year period there, that it was exhausting and it was frustrating sometimes, and I wish that I could go back to those days and replay them. So just remember that these days too will end, and you'll look back on them and take a lot of pictures so that you can enjoy the pictures later on, and trust the Lord. I found that was probably, as I look back on it, the time when I spent so much time. I really developed my relationship with God, because when the kids went off to school and Rick went down for a nap, I would sit in my chair and look out on the trees outside and read my Bible and pray. And when they went to bed at night at 8 o'clock, I'd turn on Dr. Charles Stanley and listen to him. And that was such an encouragement to me. I had a friend who would come over and say, we're going to go do this. And so just to have a friend was wonderful, and to have a mom and dad, and actually my in-laws too, who really supported us and that were there for us. And so just remember that God is always with you. He will never leave you. And when you look back on this time later on, you'll say, yes, he was with me. Praise the Lord.
I think if I were to answer the question that we posed at the very beginning with the video, we had people take little 10, 15-second clips of what they appreciate most about their mom. But well, I think the thing that I appreciate most about you, Mom, is you taught me to lean on the Lord to get through the day. And I would think back to those times when you were a young mom, a single mom, and I would walk in on you and you'd have your Bible open, you'd be praying. And I've aspired to be a parent who my kids will sometimes walk in on me with my Bible open and praying. And they won't just walk in on me always watching YouTube videos, but
Wow.
actually doing something.
I don't remember you walking in on me at all, but see, that's how the Lord works.
Well, I know it wasn't like I was interrupting you or anything. You would just look up and you'd attend to whatever we were asking about, and then we'd leave and you go back to spending time with the Lord. And that is a legacy that you've left with me, and hopefully that I'll leave with my kids. Mom, how do you think that we can pray? What for the moms in our church and our community and our world right now? How would you invite us to be in prayer for them?
Well, this is a tough time for moms. I see that all the time with Sarah, because I see her on Facebook, and I know it's hard, and for you too, to be pent up in the house so much. And these kids need to get out their energy too. So I would just say, I would pray, number one, I pray for you guys. I pray, Lord, may they love you above all else, and may they teach their children to love you, to know you, and then be with them and walk with them and let them know that you are there and that you are helping them and that you'll never leave them.
Mm-hmm. Mom, I don't think I need to pray. I think that was a prayer. So all we need to do, friends, if you agree with that prayer, we just invite you to say amen.
Amen.
And maybe in the comments section or in the chat section, you want to write down what you appreciate most about your mom, or just to lift her name up in prayer right now for those things. Or maybe you know a young mom or any mom who is struggling right now. We just invite you to type their name in the chat section or in the comments on Facebook, and let that be a prayer here for us. Friends, we have one more poet here with us. Rose Cooper has joined us. I met Rose at the Poetry Room many months ago after I shared a poem, and I came off the stage. I never met her before, and she grabbed my attention. She gave me a big hug, and she said, I felt so alone tonight until you gave that poem. And the poem that both of us shared was about some struggles as parents. So I reached out to Rose and asked her if she'd work on a poem for Mother's Day as well in quarantine. So Rose, what you got something for us here, I hope?
I got something for you. It's kind of a hybrid of two poems, and I'm going to try something a little different, so bear with me. It's dedicated to my mom. Her gate no longer has the power of 20 horses providing fuel to it. Her house no longer ruled by iron fist. The laughter of children peels only temporarily from grown old walls. I tell you now, where there were once 9, there are now none but her. She still says she's not lonely, just alone. I say to you, the silver strands she wished for, she earned, streaked naturally through her natural hair, and I'm quite sure I put a few strands there. I cry aloud. Different now. She's different now. Time is caught up with her much quicker than I am prepared for. Her time is marked in years, no longer decades. No, I'm not prepared for this. And yet, And yet, when God in her soul does the happy dance, I'm pleased to report she has not missed a beat. I heard it sung a million times. I shall not, oh, I shall not be moved. I shall not, I shall not be moved, just like the tree that's planted by the water. Oh, I shall not be moved. And mama is that tree, that mighty oak, not moved, not swayed by storms that would fell a lesser soul. Roots burrowed deeply along with her protective shield, stayed her from the harshest of elements. The trunk bearing weather-worn calluses that did harden my heart, served to somehow soften hers. And now the trick of time ages the oak gracefully. And she knows a trick of her own. A flower, even kept in captivity, will always strive to blossom, to bloom, to seek the sun. So I take this moment to plant a small flower by the water, a softening flower to intertwine with the deep-seated root. Happy Mother's Day.
Wow.
Beautiful, Rose. Beautiful. You're amazing.
Wow. Rose, I knew you did amazing poetry. I had no idea you had an amazing voice as well. Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. All right, I think you've made our host a little verklempt. So we're going to see if Sarah can follow that. Send it over to Sarah for our hosting today.
What is it? Well, good morning, friends. I'm so excited to be here with you today. I am definitely a little bit verklempt, which is a perfect word to use as we learn about Judaism. Verklempt, perfect word. I'm here with, who are you? Katie, my daughter Katie. Happy Mother's Day. Welcome to Sycamore Creek Online. We are one church in typically in 3 locations, but you know, being online, we are now in hundreds of locations. We're on lots of couches, probably in lots of dining rooms and lots of family rooms. I'm not even in the couch. And we're excited that you chose to connect with us today. Listen, friends, if you have, you probably have your phone handy or your computer handy, you are encouraged to snap a selfie and share it with us, #CouchChurchSelfie. That's a great way for us to still see you, even though we can't see you face to face, and to still get that connection. We're in the office. Yeah, whether you're in your office or wherever you happen to be. There's also lots of ways for you to connect with us online through our website as well. You are invited to share a connection card. We now have digital connection cards, and you can share those online. You're also still able to share prayer requests, prayers at sycamorecreekchurch.org. Or to go back and look at past worship services that you might have missed or want to see again. It's great that we're able to record everything and see everything. You are also welcome to download our app, SCCMI, that still always has provided lots of ways for us to connect with you and for you to further connect with us and get in touch with our mission. And lastly, kind of following our service today, we will be still hosting an all-chat digital connection cafe. So for those of you who are kind of missing that mingling time that we usually have in the cafe, we'll still be able to do that through our Zoom meeting. So please, if you're interested in doing that, Gretchen will have the link to that all chat in our Zoom chat, and we'll post that to Facebook as well. And we invite you to come and connect and see some familiar faces. So again, friends, we're so happy to have you here. We're excited to continue our series all about different religions. And our message today begins with this.
Today, I'm extra excited to have with us a guest speaker, the Rabbi Amy Bigman from Congregation Sherry Zedek up near Eastwood Town Center off of Lake Lansing Road. And Amy and I have had some face-to-face meetings in the past when I was looking for some help and guidance, thinking through some messages based on series from what we would call the Old Testament. Amy, you are sheltering in place as well. What's it been like sheltering in place for yourself? What's been your experience, and what has it been like? Is there anything about being a Jew that has made that a unique experience?
Well, first, I want to say thank you for inviting me, and it's good to be with all of you. We do worship a little bit differently these days. I am in a sanctuary all by myself with live stream. So it's so nice to be able to see at least some of your faces as you worship this morning, and as I'm honored to join you. And thank you to those of you who are sending messages in the chat here on Zoom.
Who would have thought when I asked you to do this several months ago that this is how we would be doing it?
I know, it's crazy. I mean, I went back and checked all of my emails, and they were so long ago. And of course, I was planning to be with you Sunday morning and Monday evening, and so that's different now. And I did have the great privilege of participating in a church in a pub a while back. Pastor Tom Fox had invited me to come and speak, so I'm glad to be able to be with you again, though not as we planned. To your question, yes, sheltering in place, I think, is a really important thing, and I view it from a Jewish lens in that it's a mitzvah, it's a commandment to take care of ourselves. One of the most important commandments of all, out of the 613 that are found in the Jewish Bible, is pikuach nefesh, saving a life. And so by doing what we're doing now, we're not only hopefully saving our own lives, but also others as well. And when we do go out, by wearing masks and all of those kinds of, taking all those kinds of precautions, we're really doing a commandment. We're really doing also what mitzvah is also sometimes understood as a good deed, and it's certainly true in both of those things. So it's hard because I am a hugger by nature, and I don't get to hug my members of my congregation, but I have spent these last 2 months going through our entire temple directory and reaching out to everybody, and so that's been one way that I've been able to still be part of my congregational family. And then the rest of the time I'm at home working, and I only go out of the house really to go to the temple on Friday evenings and Saturday mornings for our Sabbath worship services. So it's an experience, that's for sure.
Yeah. So we're going to do something that's a little bit different today with this message. It's going to be kind of a mixture of Rabbi Amy giving us some information, her and I talking, all of us talking together. So introduce us just a little bit right off the bat here, Amy, with Judaism.
So great. So thank you. The first thing I want to do is I want to share with you something that was written by one of my colleagues, Rabbi Dr. Rachel Sabbath Beit Halachmi, and she is a senior fellow of the Kaplan Center for Jewish Peoplehood, and she used to serve as a professor and a director of recruitment for my alma mater, Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion. And she wrote in an article the following: If someone tells you that Judaism is X or Y, you should never believe them. Judaism is such a complex civilization. It is made up of religion and culture, language and land, and a particular kind of peoplehood. In every context, different aspects of Judaism have been lived out in countless different ways. Judaism is not only complex, but also filled with contradictory opinions, so that any single view will, by definition, fail to offer a full sense of all of the possibilities. And just as an aside, I think this is one of the things that I love the most about being Jewish. And later in her commentary, she notes that, she says, I believe that at its core, Judaism primarily strives to achieve two particular goals: the ethical development of human beings and the establishment of an ethical society. So I wanted to share that with all of you today because I wanted you to understand that Judaism is not just a set of beliefs. I'm going to share with you a little bit about some of those beliefs, of course, but it's really a way of life. It's not just what we do in our synagogue building, our temple building. It's not just what we do when we're in study in religious school or adult ed, but it is what we're supposed to be doing all the time. And we are guided by these mitzvot, these commandments, such as pikuach nefesh, saving a life. And we are supposed to live our Judaism every moment of our lives. And so I'm going to try my best to share with you some basics about Judaism and answer your questions. But I need you to also understand one more thing, and that is that I am a Reform Jew. That means I'm on the liberal end of the spectrum. So while I will try to give you an overall view of Judaism as a whole, you need to just know right from the get-go that my biases are a little more on the liberal side as to how we live our lives as Jews.
We found on some levels, we've engaged each religion, that there is that spectrum in each religion. And as Christians, we're familiar with it in our own. Friends, this brings us to our first table discussion. So Carol is going to put that up on the screen here, but it's basically, what's been your experience with Judaism, or where have you encountered Jews? And we want to invite you to type your answers in the chat section of Zoom or in the comments of Facebook. Gretchen, our Church in a Pub minister, will be paying attention to those. And those of us who are here on the screen will chat a little bit about our answers to this. I think for me, one of the biggest places where I have had an experience, Rabbi Amy, is taking Hebrew for 4 years. And it's hard not to gain, I think, some exposure to Judaism by just trying to learn the language, which, of course, when you first look at it, it's unfamiliarity to us because it's a different script, reads from right to left instead of left to right. Where are the vowels at? All of those things were a big part of my experience. How about others? Sarah, Jeremy?
Well,
Gretchen?
for me, I'll go. For me, I have two dominant thoughts that come to mind. Number one is growing up in the church, hearing that Jesus was a Jew. That was always like inspiring to me, or like a sense of awe. But then certainly as you get older and you understand the plight of the Jewish people, most, in the contemporary of the Holocaust, that, there was a sense of agony or a sense of loss or and sorrow. Those would, I would say, my two major, growing up, were my two major experiences with Judaism.
For me, I've had some people in my life who were of the Jewish faith or had family members. So my mom's dad was Jewish. He was not a practicing Jew, but I always took that as, so I always tell people I'm a quarter Jewish, and I'm very fascinated by the faith. And I also had a friend in high school that had a mom who was Christian and a dad who was Jewish. And actually the dad is a regular at Buddy's now, which is where we have Church in a Pub. And I invited her to come to youth group with me when we were in high school. And I remember the night that she decided to become a Christian, she said in the car on the way home, "What am I going to tell my dad?" She's since kind of come to terms with that, and we actually had a group that attended our church that we grew up in called Jews for Jesus, and that was a really powerful experience for her. So I've had a lot of touches with the Jewish faith.
Yes, I'll go next. So I know some people know that I've kind of had a whirlwind faith history and background and story and all of that. My mother actually is Jewish, although I don't know that she's really practiced for many years. But so she's my first memory of what Judaism looked like, and the biggest image, I mean, if I could sum it up in one word, separate just from the fact that she was my mother, is I just remember seeing that that practice as just one of love. And I typed it in the comments, but I feel like of all of the religions that I've learned about, that I've been exposed to, Judaism is one that is the most strongest, most tangibly, not just a system of beliefs, but also just an entire culture. And I've just always loved it. I see, I don't know, I see so much love and wholeness in Judaism. So yeah, I know my mom is going to be watching this at some point and go, oh gosh, she's talking about me. I don't know if I'm the best image of what a Jew should look like or what a Jew should be, but it is, Mom. It is.
Gretchen, you've been paying attention to the comments. Any comment you want to lift up here before we back to Rabbi?
Megan McElwee, who attends our South Lansing campus, is sharing that one of her best friends was raised very conservative Judaism in Brooklyn, and coming out as a non-practicing and lesbian caused her to leave her community. She describes it as leaving a very insular community where she had little in common with the people raised in a secular community. So I think that's really an interesting experience. There's many people on here who have friends who are practicing Jews as well.
Yeah. All right, Rabbi Amy, you've heard a little bit of the sort of landscape of where the people are that you're speaking to. So tell us, I guess you're not going to tell us Judaism is this, because you already said in the intro that anybody who does is not going to get it right. But whatever you want to tell us about Judaism, our ears are open.
Well, great, thanks. So you might have seen me shaking my head when Gretchen was talking about Jews for Jesus, and that was not against Gretchen, but just simply I want to clarify that there are groups of people who call themselves Jews for Jesus or Messianic Jews, and they're not Jewish. They use that term for a variety of reasons, but what they believe is what you as Christians believe, and they believe in Jesus as the Christ, as the Messiah, and that is not a Jewish belief. So we're probably going to talk a little bit more about some of those beliefs in a little bit, but I just wanted to clarify that. So mainstream Judaism really is defined by three things. One is Torah, the other is God, and the other is Israel. And you can't have Judaism one without the other two, or two without the other one. So when I teach about this, I spent a lot of time on the word Torah, and obviously we don't have a lot of time today, but I will try to give it to you in as a succinct form as I possibly can. So the word Torah has a lot of different meanings. Translated, it means teaching. It's often mistranslated as law, but it comes from the same root as morah or moreh. Morah is a female teacher, moreh is a male teacher. And it's the same root as the word horim, which means parents, because our parents are our first and our best teachers. So Torah really means teaching. And it can refer to something as simple as one commandment, one basic teaching. If you ask a Jewish person, most often they will think of a Sefer Torah, the scroll of the Torah, which contains the first 5 books of the Jewish Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Those 5 are written in scroll form in Hebrew, without vowels and without punctuation. And all of the Jewish Bible, what we call the Tanakh, was originally written on scrolls. And we still continue to read that from a scroll, and only one other book from a scroll, and that's the book of Ruth. Excuse me, the book of Esther. I'm thinking of Ruth because I'm teaching that soon. Sorry, the book of Esther. And that's for our holiday of Purim. But all the other books we now read out of actual books. When we use the word Torah, we can refer to these, either this scroll or what you might know the word Pentateuch, or in Hebrew, a Chumash. Chumash comes from the Hebrew word chamesh, which means the number 5, and Chumash is a compilation of the words from Genesis through Deuteronomy with commentaries and with translations. And then sometimes when people say they're studying Torah, they actually mean they're studying Tanakh. They actually mean they're studying the entire Jewish Bible, which has this narrative from the beginning of Genesis telling the history of the world, so to speak. Now, let me just briefly say that probably most Jews don't necessarily believe that the world was created in the way it says in Genesis, but we have that story, and it continues on through the Israelites in Egypt, and the Israelites leaving Egypt, and the giving of the 10 Commandments, symbolic of all Jewish teaching, and ends basically with the death of Moses. And then the next part of the Tanakh is called Nevi'im, the prophets, and it's included specific prophets themselves, the ones that you're familiar with: Isaiah, Zechariah, Zephaniah, Micah, Ezekiel, Jeremiah, and so on. And also some of the other books that continue the narrative. So 1st and 2nd Kings and 1st and 2nd Samuel, and similar books. So we have in that, we have both continued narration of the history of the Jewish people, and also poetry and other writings from these people that lived at a specific time. And then the last part of the Jewish Bible is called the Ketuvim, the writings. This includes books such as the Book of Psalms, the Book of Proverbs. It has some narrative in it, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, which basically is a summary of what's come before, and the books of Ezra and Nehemiah and others like that, and has some wisdom literature and so on. All of that together is called in Hebrew the Tanakh, and it is mainly what you as Christians would call the Old Testament, but not exactly. The books are in a different order. Christianity takes them out of the order that they are in the Tanakh and puts them actually in an order that makes a lot of sense, which is chronological. And ours are organized in a different way. Also, some Christian Bibles include additions to the book of Daniel and the book of Esther, and some Christian Bibles also include books that didn't make it into the Jewish canon. So I'm always very careful to make sure that we explain that the Tanakh is more than just, is different than Old Testament. They're not exactly the same. And of course, the Tanakh being written in Hebrew. And then there are other genres of literature that we would all call Torah. Then I want to talk just really briefly as part of our 3-part definition of Judaism, that's Israel. And so in Hebrew we say Yisrael, the one who struggles with God. And that comes from the biblical story of Jacob in the book of Genesis, where he goes from his Hebrew name Yaakov, Jacob, to Yisrael, the one who strives with God, after a situation that he had, and I'm sure you're familiar with from the book of Genesis. And we take that name upon ourselves. And there's 3 different ways you can use the word Israel or Yisrael. One is Am Yisrael, the people of Israel, meaning the Jewish people worldwide, those living today and those in the past. Eretz Yisrael, the biblical land of Israel, which is larger than the current state of Israel. And then Medinat Yisrael, the current state of Israel that was, it came into being actually at this time of year in May of 1948. So that's part 2. Part 3 is God. Now, usually when I teach, I don't talk about God. I don't teach about God until many, many, many hours and sessions into my class, but we don't have that amount of time, so I'm going to try to give it to you rather quickly. So there are a variety of beliefs about God, and they're all considered good, legitimate Jewish beliefs, as long as they fit into the following structure. One, the following parameters. One is that there's only one God. The other is that God has no partners. And the last is that God is not a physical being. So you can have a lot of different beliefs about God. You can believe about a God as a spirit. You can a presence that helps you, all sorts of different things. And as long as they're within that parameter, those 3 parameters, they're considered good Jewish views of God. So what I might believe personally about God may not be exactly what my family members believe. And not only is that okay, but it's encouraged, accepted. And of course, I should also say that how a person believes about God when they're younger can and probably should be different than how they believe as they mature, as they have more experiences. So what I believed when I was 5 is probably different than what I believed at 15, and probably different than what I believe now at 54. So, and that's all considered a good thing, a positive. Then the other thing I wanted to talk to you about, hopefully briefly, is about mitzvot, commandments. And we briefly mentioned this earlier. So I know you're all familiar with the 10 Commandments. They are found first in the book of Exodus and then in the book of Deuteronomy. I like to refer to them as the Big 10. There are, however, more than 10. There are 613 commandments in Jewish tradition. There are 248 positive commandments, what we might say in the old-fashioned English, thou shalt, the things you should do, and 365 negative commandments, thou shalt not, the things you're not supposed to do. These numbers are very symbolic. The 365 is very easy for all of us to understand. We know that number is the number of days in our secular calendar, which is different number of days than there are in the Jewish calendar. And 248, that's a little trickier. In ancient days, people believed that we had 248 different parts of our body, not only our actual body, but all of our inner organs. And so the symbolism was that with all that we are, with our entire body, all that we are and who we are, every day, 365 days of a year, we are to follow these commandments. So that's the symbolism there. The word mitzvah in the singular commandment, mitzvot in the Hebrew, in the plural, commandments, is difficult sometimes for liberal Jews, because to be commanded, you have to have a commander and a commandee. And so some people who struggle with believing in God, which is a perfectly normal thing and very accepted, sometimes have a problem thinking of commandments in that way. So lots of scholars have different ways of thinking about the commandments. One that I use a lot, that I found many years ago in a children's religious school textbook, talks about how each person has a world repair kit. You have a toolbox, and everyone can imagine this because we all have toolboxes in our homes for whatever things that we might be doing around our houses. And in our world repair kit, we have certain tools that help us to make the world a better place. And those tools are these commandments or these teachings, whatever terminology you want to use. And so I love that image of the world repair kit, because I think it's one that people can really relate to and very easy to conceive of and understand. So even if you don't believe that God commanded these specific acts to do or to not do, you can still believe in the commandments to make our world a better place. So I think I'll stop with that.
All right, so as we've been listening, friends, you've perhaps heard some similarities between Christianity and Judaism. And so, Carol, you want to put that up on the screen here, our question for discussion right now. Where do you see the similarities? I'll start just with a similarity that struck me, particularly because you mentioned what you believe at age 5 versus what you believe now. And Mom, I don't know if you remember, at least I assume it was age 5. That's what I feel like. But there was this moment where we knelt at my bed at age 5, and you led me through praying. And of course, in a Christian world, I was praying to accept Jesus and so on. And I've regularly said that the commitment that I made at 5, while it was completely genuine and honest, that commitment at 5 doesn't maintain someone now at 44. And that commitment has had to grow over time, as well as understanding. So that development is certainly something I've experienced, a similarity there as you described it. How about others? What are similarities? In fact, maybe Jeremy, I'm going to kick it to you because maybe that first song you heard something with what you did and what Amy shared.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Like we know that the Jewish folks, they, as we've been in this series, is like they say or proclaim, and maybe Rabbi Amy can give the exact, but Deuteronomy, love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, mind, and strength. And that certainly was the similarity that we just heard with those concrete numbers, that they have significance to the Jewish faith. And I'm especially thankful that you were able to reveal that to us. It's fascinating.
That gave me, Jeremy, a deeper appreciation of that song and kind of the underpinnings of that.
Yeah, me too,
that
for
idea
sure.
That there are 248, or were thought to be 248 parts inside you, and 365 days of the year. So all of you, every day of the year. That's really a beautiful, poetic way of thinking about it. Particularly that song we first sang. How about others? What are similarities? And friends, you can write your comments of things that you noticed in the chat section in Zoom or in the comments section on Facebook. But how about others who are with us today? What are similarities that you noticed?
Tabitha Martin on our Facebook page is saying, I think that we are similar in that we all struggle with God. I really identified with that struggling that you described, Rabbi Amy. Also, Chrissy Brokenshire is talking about the similarity in the personal relationship with God, that we each see and experience him in our own unique way. I feel like I already understand the Jewish faith more now than I ever have before. So this is really great. Thank you.
How about others? What are some similarities that you heard or came to your mind? I had lots of them that I noticed. So maybe people are just waiting for the ice to be broken. But go ahead, Sarah.
I was going to say, it's the perfect time for my dog to start barking, right? I think that, Duffy, I think I keep coming back to, I knew the word.
It sounds pretty rough over there.
I'm going to just let him out. Give me 1 second. You go. Go on. All right.
Who let the dogs out? Sarah did.
It was like on cue. I've been sitting here muted and that. Yeah.
Who
anyway,
let the dog out? Sarah.
Dog's really moved by the Spirit this morning. I keep coming back to, I knew the word mitzvah as meaning good deed. I'd always heard it as like that's how it translates. And when Rabbi Amy earlier said that mitzvah is a commandment, there was something about just that reframing of it. And I know that it's still the same thing as a good deed, and it's still the commandments are all about love. But there was and I put it up in the comments. I was like, wow, yeah, I guess those good deeds are commandments. They're they're in order by which we're supposed to live. And that connection was really strong with me. Like it's just kind of reverberating inside of me. Mitzvah, commandment.
There's really something beautiful about being commanded to do good things.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, well, I think most of us would hope that we would do good things. But that's a lot better compulsion, I suppose. Compulsion is maybe not the right word, but yeah, a grace to do good deeds.
Mm-hmm. I thought it was fascinating that the commandments were separated into like positive, like what you should do, and then negative, what you shouldn't do. Because I think, or I reflect on things that I've heard in classes when I was working in the daycare, and then, parenting tips, they often say, rather than saying, don't do that, we're encouraged to say, do this instead. And so I thought, yeah, that's a good point to separate them in those ways. There's things you shouldn't do, and there's things you should do, just like with our kids,
Yeah. Something that struck me was just between Christianity and Judaism is that both a book is very central. And of course, if you ever go to a synagogue, it's often in a scroll form, but still words on a page, and so much overlap. In fact, Rabbi Amy, as you were saying different names of those, I don't know if my kids, what they were doing, but I've named my sons Micah and Samuel. And those are after Micah 6:8. What does the Lord require of you but to do justice and love mercy and walk humbly with your God? And we've written those on their doorposts as they come and go from their bedroom. And Samuel, speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. So I often go in each night before they go to bed, before I go to bed and they're asleep, and I pray for those things from Micah and from Samuel for my kids. And that's a shared similarity that we've both taken those stories, those words on a page, and are living them out. In fact, I took it a little step further and borrowed from the Jewish idea of writing them on your doorposts, which a lot of Christians don't do that, but I just took out a black Sharpie and wrote it up and down the door.
Cool.
So there's a lot of similarities people are catching. I think you have a little more to talk about God at this point. Is that correct?
I'm happy to, if you'd like. And I do want to obviously point out the obvious, which is that the reason that Judaism and Christianity have so many similarities, of course, is that our Bible is part of your Bible. And in fact, it's the majority of your Bible, right? So if you look at a Christian Bible, if this is the Christian Bible, this much of it's the Jewish Bible. The New Testament is relatively short compared to what you would refer to as the Old Testament. So obviously there's a lot of similarities. So I wanted to share with you a little bit. I shared this with my congregation a number of years ago during our High Holy Days about a God survey that one of my colleagues did many years ago. His name's Rabbi Mark Dov Shapiro from Sinai Temple in Springfield, Massachusetts. And he asked all of the adults in his congregation some questions about God, because one of the things that I soon found is what I find is that if people think of God in a specific way, and if they don't believe in God in that particular way, they think they don't believe in God. And it's really not true within Judaism. So here's a couple, just a real quick things, because I know our time is short. He points out that in his congregation, more women than men believed in God, and that older people were more apt to believe than younger people. And that also most of his congregants did not, quote, construe God as a celestial figure who acts in this world. For them, God is a presence or a power. For them, God is not so much above us as God is beside us or within us. Most believe that God acts when we act with God's, let me say that again. Most people believe that God acts when we act with God's attributes, such as love, kindness, and justice. And he also said that most of his congregants agreed with the statement that we are partners with God in the ongoing process of creation, and that God is a presence in the universe supporting us to do our best. Which I really loved, and wish I could say it as eloquently as he does on a regular basis. This idea that that God is around us. I often talk about with our religious school kids how God's inside of us and all around us. And very often one of the prayers that I like to share at funerals is about how God is with us even in our darkest moments, as when we lose a loved one. And then I look out at the community of people that are there for the funeral, not something that we can do right now in the time of COVID, but usually there are family and extended family and friends there. And I look out and say, God is here in our family and our friends. God is here giving us support through these people. And I believe that very sincerely, that that's how God acts in this world. So God's not somewhere like up there, called, heaven or whatever terminology you want to use, but that God's within each one of us. And then if I could, I'd like to share this one other thing. Rabbi Rick Jacobs, who's the president of the Union for Reform Judaism, which is the North American group of Reform liberal synagogues, he wrote an article in an old magazine that doesn't exist anymore called Reform Judaism Magazine, when he was talking about how Jews have difficulty talking about God. And this is what he says. I hope this will not offend anybody, this early part, but I think you'll understand and appreciate where he was going with this. He says, there's a deep reason for our unease. The God talk we hear most is hardly worth emulating. Watching athletes pointing to the heavens to acknowledge their savior after scoring a touchdown, you'd think God actually cared about which team won. While I hope God's presence can be felt in all places, including football stadiums, I find it offensive to reduce the Almighty to a football mascot in the sky. Contemporary Jews need compelling ways to get to God, not popular cultural conceptions that pass for religion. It's like the man who wakes up late for a new job interview. He takes a quick shower, speeds his car to the address, but can't find a parking spot. Desperate, he prays, God, if you provide me with a parking spot, I will go to temple every Saturday morning and I will never lie again. 2 minutes later, he locates a spot and says to God, never mind, I found one. If this is what passes for religion these days, it's no wonder that so many of us have trouble finding God in our midst. And then he concludes with this. In our tradition, God does not help us to find parking spaces, but helps us to find ourselves. In our tradition, the Holy One is present, not just when we score a touchdown, but also when we fumble the ball. Seeking the nameless one in good times and bad has always been at the heart of Jewish spiritual practice. Seeking does not always mean finding, but we won't know unless we look deeply, well beyond the fleeting trivialities of popular culture.
I don't think you offended anyone reading that at all. I suspect that many people resonated deeply with that as well. And I feel like your message to us today has been in a very Jewish form, in that you have quoted many other rabbis while speaking to us today.
Yes.
And so maybe in the spirit of that, let's talk a little bit about some of the differences. And you've alluded to this already, in a difference of understanding about who Jesus is, and talking about God. And so I think back to one of the people that I read in seminary, Gregory of Nyssa, who said, when I say God, I mean Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And that, I think, that idea of the Trinity, or who Jesus is as described in the narratives of the Gospels, in his resurrection, and Christians trying to kind of come to grips with what that means, and how Jesus can be God and human, and God can still be one. And I think probably if you're a Christian, you've kind of come to the conclusion that Christians have given a good answer for that tension. And if you're not a Christian, you've perhaps come to a different conclusion on whether Christians have come to a good answer for that. But just give us a little understanding of how Jews would understand Jesus.
Okay. So I want to go back to what you first said, which is about quoting other rabbis. There is a tradition, and I'm sure you know it from your seminary studies, of quoting those who came before you. In Hebrew, it's called b'shem omro, in the name of the one who said it. And it's crucial to do that, not only with modern rabbis. I quoted, I think, 3 rabbis today that are all living, but even more so, all those who came before us, all the teachers who came before us. And that, of course, is what the Hebrew word rabbi means, my teacher. So that's my job, is to teach, right? So, sure. So I, sometimes Christians will ask me about Jesus, and they find it really hard to understand that we don't think about Jesus all that often. I think about Jesus in times like this when I'm asked, and also I do have a section in my high school class. I teach our 10th through 12th graders about Jesus and about Christianity, because in our world today and in our country, of course, the majority of people are Christians, and I want them to have a basic understanding before they go out further into this world of what people believe. But other than that, really, Jesus is not at all part of our beliefs. I often like to say, and I think it was Jeremy said earlier about, Jesus being Jew and learning about that. And I'm glad that you learned that growing up, because I sometimes speak in churches and find that, like, I'm the only one who points that out. And it's really important to understand where Jesus was coming from in his day and age and his religious beliefs. So he was born as a Jewish person. He lived as a Jew. The things that he taught, by and large, I'd say 98% or so of what he is quoted as saying in the New Testament is what I'm still teaching today. And he died as a Jew, right? And the belief in Jesus as the Christ, Jesus as the Messiah, doesn't come about until later. And again, Jeremy was quoting from Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 5. And in Hebrew, this is what it sounds like. This is how we chant it, either from the Torah scroll or in all of our worship. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. And Jesus knew that teaching well, and he quotes that in the New Testament. He's asked in the Gospels, what's the greatest commandment of all? And he says those words. He also says, Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one, which is from the verse just before that, chapter 6, verse 4 of the book of Deuteronomy. As far as I can tell from my studies, and I am not a scholar of Christianity by any means, but I have studied, Jesus was doing what Jewish people did in his day. He was clearly a great teacher because he had so many people following him. And as I said, probably 97, 98% of what he teaches, I'm still teaching today. So when you come to worship with us, and when we're back to normal, I hope that you will do that. You also can watch us on our live stream from our website, but it's just me. But we also often have visiting groups from churches. And I think you would see in our liturgy things that are very familiar, either direct words from the Bible, which was Jesus's Bible, but you would also see things that keep within those themes as well, even if they're not direct quotes. So Jesus is not at all part of Jewish tradition or teaching. And like I said, really minimal contact, except that I feel it's my responsibility as a teacher, as a rabbi, to make sure that my folks know more about the religion, the main religion that surrounds us. Because so many of us have friends who are Christian, we have relatives who are Christian, and that's important for us to understand. And one of the most important teachings in Judaism is tikkun olam, repair or perfection of the world, to make our world a better place. And one of the ways that I think that we can do that is by learning more about each other's religions.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to do here in this series, which I feel like it certainly has been true for me. I've learned a lot about each of the religions. I've built some friendships, understood my own faith a little bit better, and had to kind of rethink a couple things along the way as well. So it's been really positive. If people are interested a little more on that intersection, one scholar doing a lot of work on that is Amy Jill Levine from Vanderbilt University. And if folks are interested, they can explore that. Some of her writings. She writes as a Jew a lot about Jesus. She probably thinks more about Jesus than most Jews do.
Yes, she's wonderful. I've heard her speak several times, and she's really wonderful.
Yeah. Rabbi, one last place. There are certainly some differences, but there are similarities, and perhaps a bridge here in this time is that we're all struggling, we're all suffering. So perhaps you can give us just a brief word of encouragement about how, Jews have suffered a lot, and in many cases at the hands of those who have claimed to be Christians. And so how might you encourage those who are suffering in this time from a Jewish perspective?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I like the way you phrase it, that Jews have suffered at the hands of those who claim to be Christians, because as I understand your religion, it's a loving religion, and you wouldn't, and that God has commanded all of us to love each other, right? It says in the book of Leviticus, love your neighbor as yourself. It was in the yearly scriptural reading, the weekly reading that we do just in the last week or so. And so I think that that's a really important thing, to love our neighbors. And I think it's also a really hard concept. Like, what if I don't like my neighbor? You might not actually like that person, but especially in today's world, as we're all dealing with COVID-19 and we're sheltering in place, we all have to reach out to each other in whatever ways we can. For some of us, the best thing to do is to stay home. That is a way of loving our neighbors. There's no doubt. And for taking all of the precautions that we need, but also reaching out to people. your neighbors, members of your church, people you work with, you go to school with, what have you. I have found in my phone calls to members of our synagogue, when it sometimes takes people a second to realize that the rabbi is calling you. And when they do, they're so excited to talk to me, to have another person to talk to, some to share some of their struggles with, but mostly just to be there. And I've given everyone my cell phone number, which I had never done before, so they can call at any time, because that reaching out to people, I've been using Facebook more than I probably ever have, so that we can see each other too. And so this morning when I called my mom to wish her a happy Mother's Day, I saw her lying in bed when I called her this morning. And we looked at each other, with as close as we could. And we're used to celebrating Mother's Day separate because we live far apart. But it was even more important to do that today, and to do that for as many people as we can. I think is really an important thing, that all of us, no matter our religion, no matter what our faith is or our lack of faith, to do whatever we can to be helpful. I've also tried to do little things like when I'm ordering in, I don't cook, so when I order in, I'm trying to be as generous as I can in giving tips to those people who are out there doing that work. When I go to the grocery store, I go every couple of weeks. I try to thank all of the people in the staff that work at the grocery store. They sometimes think I'm nuts when I'm walking down the aisles, and I say thank you for keeping this this grocery store open so we can have food and stuff. But I think that those kinds of things, they may sound really little, but I think that those are really helpful, especially in this time where we are so isolated from each other.
Yeah. I think once again, your answer to that question has been a very Jewish one. You didn't answer it from a big theoretical perspective about God's sovereignty or anything like that. You just went back to this basic, let's love the people around us as best as we can. Call them, give those who are serving, thank them, give them bigger tips than usual. And so, friends, I want to invite you to thank Rabbi Amy for joining us today. Would you give her some love in the comment section, in the chat or the comments on Facebook, and thank God for her?
Tom, I didn't ask you this, and so I hate to put you on the spot, but I found a prayer that was written by an American Israeli liturgist that, if you don't mind, I would love to share with all of you.
I would love for you to share that.
Thank you. This is written by a man named Eldon Salavi, and he you can find this prayer and many others, including a lot about coronavirus times, on his website called tobendlight.com. And this one is called Sheltering in Place. May it be your will, God of our fathers and mothers, that our sheltering in place be for health and healing, longevity and life, sustenance, renewal, and love. Let our best selves shine forth in these moments of uncertainty, these moments of unfamiliar distances, these moments that may yield stress or conflict, confusion or despair. Let peace arise inside us. Let kindness flow between us. Let deliverance rise up from heaven, and let health and goodwill radiate throughout the world as a river of blessings. Thank you for including
me. Said, amen. Amen. Well, friends, in this time, we all need to connect with something bigger than ourselves, connect with God and with others. And we're trying to do that here at Sycamore Creek. So we want to invite you to connect with us through our digital connection card, sycamorecreekchurch.org/connect. And that way you will be in the know of everything that's going on. It's really the quickest and easiest way to connect with us. You can also, on that connection card right now, sign up to be part of the call team to do similar things to what Rabbi Amy was talking about. We're having people call people in the church. And that is just a simple, easy way to reach out amidst this time of sheltering in place. So take some time to fill out that connection card. And if we've done our Zoom jujitsu well, it'll just pop up when this Zoom meeting is over in your browser. We want to give you a heads up, mark the date for a digital town hall coming up. We're going to be exploring how we're thinking about reopening. And that's not happening anytime soon, but we're thinking about phases, and we want to give you some time to do a Q&A with me and Pastor Mark. So mark this date down, Tuesday, May 19th at 7 p.m., and that will be a Zoom meeting, sycamore-creek-church.org/town-hall. You're probably wondering, how do I remember all of these URLs? Well, the easiest one is just to sign up through our digital connection card, and then you'll get a daily email with all of those URLs for where to get to places. We also want to invite you to continue to share your generosity with Sycamore Creek and to give generously. You can give in a lot of different ways, but electronic giving is perhaps the easiest way right now through our app. Search for SCCMI on the App Store. And you can also give on our website, sycamore-creek-church.org/give. We'll get you to that place. And your generosity helps us continue to create spaces like this where people can encounter God and can connect with others. I think back especially, I just want to celebrate with you something, but I got to start first with a bit of a lament. With the shooting of Ahmaud Arbery earlier this year and the video that came out this week, we see the essential need for white people to join alongside people of color in regular, consistent, daily anti-racist work. And I want you to know that our church is central to a movement in Lansing called Congregations Organizing for Racial Reconciliation, or CORE for short. And we met this past week via Zoom to continue our work. This wasn't just because of the shooting or the video that came out. This was a regularly planned gathering. We met with a diverse group of people across many congregations. Racism, subtle or blatant, impacts not only people of color, but it impacts all of us. And it makes us all less than human. And so in doing so, we rob the glory of God that's due to God when humans who are made in the image of God act less than or treat other people as if they were made in less than the image than we are. Now, let me tie this back to your giving, because your giving is what's creating environments like this to happen, where we can continue this anti-racist work. So thank you so much for your giving. Racism didn't disappear just because we're all sheltering in place. In fact, in some ways, it's reared its ugly head even more. So thank you again. Thank you so much for your giving. We've come to the end of our worship service, and we always end with a question. And we want to invite you to join in answering this question either in the comments or to join me in the digital cafe afterwards. But how grateful are you for your mom right now, or in what ways are you grateful for your mom? You heard people at the beginning start with a video, and we want to invite you to join me here in just a couple minutes. You've just seen us here on the screen, but I'd love to see you in our digital cafe, sycamore-creek-church.org/all-chat. sycamore-creek-church.org/all-chat, and Gretchen is putting those links in the chat section or in the comments on Facebook. So all you have to do when the service is over is click on that link. Hey friends, that brings us to the end of our service, but we asked one of our favorite musicians in our band, Marion Wilson, to bring us out here, our worship service, and she picked a song by George Harrison, one of the Beatles, My Sweet Lord, and I never really paid much attention to this song until Marion picked it, but it's kind of an intersectionality between Judaism and Hinduism that George Harrison is singing about here. So we're going to send it over to Marion, and she's going to take us out with George Harrison, My Sweet Lord.
Rock on.
Really hallelujah. Ooh, Shabbat Shalom. Really wanna see you. Really wanna be with you. Really wanna see you, Lord. Really wanna see you, Lord. But it takes so long, my Lord. Ooh, my Lord, Lord. Ooh, hallelujah. Hallelujah. Ooh, really wanna see you. Really wanna be with you. Really wanna see you, Lord, but it takes so long. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Salam Aleichem. Salam Aleichem. I really wanna see you. Really wanna be with you. Really wanna see you, Lord, but it takes so long, my Lord. Oh, my Lord. Oh, my Lord.
Woo! Yeah, Marion.
Nice job, Marion. All right, friends. Thank again once more, Rabbi Amy, and we will see you all over in the digital cafe.
Where'd the button go?